Okey doke.
All right, so we'll get this meeting started. Liz, did you find out anything about the programming for the North Main signal
Yeah.
project?
Yeah, so I spoke with Derek because I wanted to make sure I fully understood what it was actually supposed to be, because I had a feeling that maybe there was a misunderstanding about what was actually put in and what we were allowed to put in based off of PennDOT standards, because I started to get the impression that people were expecting it to be red all around, and that we were never approved to do that. We don't have the kind of pedestrian traffic to have ever had that be the case. So when I spoke to Derek earlier today, and I wrote it down so that I would not forget. So the early pedestrian release, when a pedestrian is crossing Main Street, their walk phase has an advanced phase of like 3 to 5 seconds ahead of any vehicle receiving green. That was the only direction that we were allowed to have a formally advanced phase, where there can be no other movement of traffic other than the pedestrians for a little while, so that they can lay claim, and then they have the right of way and the vehicles have to wait for them. When it comes to Afton, because of the left turning signal and the way that that works, there was not an option to be able to have a formally advanced pedestrian phase for it. So what pedestrians will be allowed to have to be into the intersection when crossing Afton after the left turn signal turns off. So when it's green, like the green balls, not just an arrow, when it's the green balls, that's when you can cross Afton. So if that is what is happening, then that is what is supposed to be out there. Because I know you shared with me John Celentano being like, well, we should just have diagonals. You don't have the kind of intersections where you could ever have that. That's like down at the stadiums and like really heavy traffic inner city kind of stuff. So that is not what could happen. So I don't know if Yuri needs a reminder of whatever Derek shared with him of what was available or not. I don't know, but that is what was designed, and if that is what is out there, then we're good. Because I did clarify with Fred at Armour that had been updated about a month ago. So before I send him back out there and incur more cost, I want to make sure that this is just potentially a misunderstanding of what was being done versus not really being there.
I think that's what it was, because I did go out there and check it, and it works basically how you just described it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. So that one's taken care of. Did we get any further on the Mary Yardley Bridge after that meeting with DCNR, or are we still?
So we are in the process of kind of going back and forth with them again. I met with the design team earlier today to fully explain. I was hoping that I was going to get the plans from DCNR by the end of last week that would show their new grading for the elevation project, so that we can just tie into it. I think they're still going to send them to us. We just haven't gotten them yet. But I kind of told the team that make that assumption that right before us they're going to bring the 39 up, and that's what you should start from. And they're going to start working on that. And then because part of what we're doing now is considered restoration of the towpath, that opens us up to some grants directly from DCNR. So I'm going to be having conversations with Devin and trying to figure out what other cost saving options we have, especially if there is the potential to pull out the grading component of the project and have it be under that $21,000 limit that municipalities have, where you have to bid it competitively if it's over that. So if we can keep it under, then we could potentially use their side crew, which I think is just going to be better for everybody and cheaper. So definitely exploring all options and avenues to continue to reduce cost and take advantage of the fact that they're already doing a project. And if their project continues to get delayed and they can't do it until the spring, maybe we can do them congruently, which would be wonderful. So looking into it, trying to stay abreast of it. But yeah, I think the being out there all together on Tuesday was very useful, especially for them to hear that we are trying to purchase the Pico lot and all that sort of stuff.
Great.
And the only question I had, Liz, with regard to the Mary Yardley Bridge, is it possible, and you know, in the fundraising team, we're going out there fundraising, is it possible to get a kind of project outline, kind of a map of the project, when we expect certain timelines and things like that of the project to be complete? You know, for fundraising efforts, I think it could really help.
Yeah, definitely. I am working on that. I was hoping to have it with this last report, but after the meeting with DCNR, it kind of blew up our schedule. So I am definitely going to have that for you with the next report. And I will keep in mind that the idea is to be able to use it for fundraising things. When I was on the call earlier today, I asked the infrastructure group to please reach back out to Gator and see if we can get a rendering from them that you guys can use as well, so that there's something that people can look at.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and the next thing would be, is everything along as going to plan for the North Main sidewalk, all the engineering and all that?
Yeah, so Paula was able to get written permission from everybody except one resident at 108. So we instructed the survey crew to knock on that door. If nobody's there, nobody answers, they're going to skip over it, I guess. But as far as I know, they're going to be out there tomorrow, which I let Paula know. And then I think that it would be prudent to just have a general email list of all these residents, so that we can keep them in the loop as we continue to progress, because it is my understanding, the more history I learn about phase one, lack of transparency was the biggest issue. And after speaking with Rose for a while and explaining that, you know, because she had asked to see, she wanted to know where things were going to be. And I was like, I don't have any plans to show you yet. Like, we're just in the beginning. Like, there's nothing to show. But we are still on track to have conceptual plans completed by the end of the month, so that we can include them with our MTF grant, which we have the resolution to approve today. And once we have those conceptual plans, my intention is to send that out to all the residents so that they can see where the alignment is going to be, and then they can make comments if they have any before we get into the nitty-gritty design work. And then if we have to fix things, it's, you know, a big problem. Like, if we do it early on, it should be fine. And with the fact that we are sticking with the 33-foot right away, I really can't imagine anybody's going to have any real issues, because most people's things are outside of that. So, but yeah, once they wrap up the survey work tomorrow and we get that back in, the design team is ready to hop back on and finish up those conceptual plans.
Great.
Oh, wait. Also, additionally, we just found out at the end of last week that the PennDOT MTF grant is open again for submissions, and it's due on November 6th. So I found out after I did my report. So sorry, I didn't get to include it.
All right.
So yeah,
that in the footnote.
yeah. So that's due November 6th. And that's the one that we were told that since we are now closing out phase one, we have a higher likelihood of being chosen, since we will no longer have an open project. So I think for that particular grant, since the minimums are higher, but it has a 30% match, we could potentially apply for all the way out to McKinley, but that might require more discussion, because that would heavily impact the overall cost, and that would change with the 30%.
Yeah.
And I know we're trying to
I would say just stick with finishing all the way down to the Mary Yardley Bridge, because that's something that's attainable to get done this coming 2021 season. And then if we get that, then we can keep going after that.
If we end up getting both the DCED MTF grant, the one that's due at the end of September, and the PennDOT one, PennDOT one has more flexibility with what can be used for design, and we could potentially use that to do the design part for out to McKinley if we end up doing both of them.
Yeah,
so
that would be great. But I really want to try to stick to the plan of laying sidewalk in 21. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
if we could get it all the way out to the bridge in 21, if we do get the extra grants, then that would be fantastic. But either way, I want to weigh, some sort of thing to make forward progress.
Understood for sure. Yeah. So is it worth mentioning that the PennDOT grant tonight at the big meeting, or can that wait to my engineer's report the next round?
Yeah, that can wait for the engineer's report. I just want to make sure that we actually apply by, whenever the date
Yeah,
is,
no,
which is the 6th.
yeah,
Yeah.
November 6th. Yeah. So we'll have to make sure that we get approved to do the application by the first meeting in October. And then we would need the resolution approved at the second meeting in October.
Okay. Yeah, that's attainable. That's doable.
Yep.
All right. That's the main public works things. Paul, is there anything else?
Liz, I just have one question. I got a complaint about the height of the signaling poles at the intersection, and somebody suggested cutting them down.
It's not really something that I'm aware of
Right.
that happens, because again, it goes back to it being a PennDOT intersection and they have their standards.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can ask Fred, the contractor, if he has any prior experience with doing something like that, and if they have a safe way to like cauterize it and cover it so that it's not like a sharp metal edge or
right.
that. But I don't feel super positive that that is something that we can do. And back to I think Susan Taylor's main point, we may need to revamp our protocols for things happening in the historic district and making sure that somebody gets to evaluate the look and feel of things.
But like you said, it's a PennDOT intersection. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, so this way I can tell when
Also,
she asks
Paul,
again. Mhm.
Also, Paul, I actually am remembering like 2 or 3 years ago, I went to like a PennDOT meeting for, I don't remember what it was for, but it was like a 2-hour long informative session about all things PennDOT. And one of the things was that the sign height and pole height is actually a specific design. So if a car were to hit it and it were to go down, it has a less of a chance of hurting somebody or going
Okay.
into a car windshield or something like that. So
Oh yeah, they have
I
all
never even thought
sorts
about.
of, there's all sorts of reasoning behind what the design standards are and
Yeah.
where it all comes from. A lot of it's dependent on the speed that people can go through the intersection at and things and such. So it's, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Paula, still no word on the Pico lot?
Nope, I will reach out to him again tomorrow and keep bugging him. He did say that they received the new appraisal and they were reviewing it in-house first before they reached out to us to discuss it.
Oh, okay. He didn't give you any indication about what they
Nope,
are. I'm so curious.
me too.
So curious. Okay.
All right, I think that covers all the public works things, unless anybody has a question. Or if is there any residents with questions or anything, feel free to do the old hand raise.
Jill, if you have a question, you're muted.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how you
Hello.
doing?
Hi, everybody. I don't know the proper protocol. I think Paul, I was probably supposed to email you first about this.
No, you could just come. Any residents could come to these
Oh.
meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, it's public works. It's formal/informal, so it's no problem at all.
Okay. So my concern, and I think most of my neighbors, is what's going on with our street. How Jervu, Cold Spring, and Windsor have been affected by what happened over a year ago with our street, and all of the stones, the big stones that are still there, and how they've been washed now into the street. They never came back and finished the project.
So I don't know if you were part of the residents that initially complained that we met with
No.
in November. But there were several residents that were very adamant about not wanting the larger stone in front of their homes. And so we met with them the Friday after Thanksgiving and discussed that in those particular areas, we could have the larger stone removed and replaced with smaller two-way stone mixed with fines and compacted in there. But we warned everybody that during large storm events, there was a high probability that it would be washed out. And everybody acknowledged that and agreed that they wanted to have the smaller stone and not have the big rocks. So that is what was done. I understand that that is not a good long-term solution, but at this point in time, the borough doesn't have a liquid fuels program planned for this year or next year. So to address this, it would need to be its own project. And so that is something that the borough has to direct us to do.
Okay, so they came back and they did half of it though. They actually put blacktop over it and they put these bumps so that the rain washes away, but only half of the project, and then they left.
So the only certain areas were addressed based off of owners that complained.
So there's big stones and large stones all washed in the street in some sections. And then there's other sections where the road is just all broken up. And then there's other sections where the blacktop is like a bump so that the rain washes away.
So that's the rolled curb, yes.
Okay. And you're saying that that's it? It's done? Nothing can be done with it?
At this point in time, there's nothing planned that it could be tacked on to address it. But I'm acknowledging that what is there right now is not a long-term solution.
No, it's dangerous because a lot of the big stones have washed. They're everywhere on the street. One of the little girls, the kids can't even ride their bikes near that section. There's just, and one little girl fell. I mean, it looks like a disaster. I took pictures of the whole thing. It's a mess. Even where they did lay the stones, the street is all broken up and it's not even. It's a mess.
So some of the street is continuing to unravel and be undermined? Is that what you're saying?
Not, I don't think it's continued. I think that that's just the way they left it. They came in and when they did it, they said, oh, they're going to come back and finish. I even spoke with them and I'm not even involved. It's not even near my house. But I asked them and they said, no, we're going to be coming back. And that was what I understood. And then nobody ever came back to finish. I don't think any of the residents were happy with anything. But you would know that more than me.
Yes, I'm definitely well aware that nobody was happy. Matt, do you have anything to say?
We can send Ken out there to take a look at it and get whatever stones are in the street, off the street, if Paula can do that. And then we can look into it next time you're out, Liz. Maybe we can take a walkthrough through it. But this is what was done was what their residents requested to be done, because they complained about the runoff and everything, and that's what we did with between the rolled curb and the stone. And then with the issues with residents that complained, like we did go out and address it and do what they requested. So in the future, we're going to look into, possibly applying for some grants to do, some drainage projects and things. But if there was a road program next year that we could tack it onto, then as Liz was saying, we would. But there's no current road program, so it would have to be its own separate project, which would make the cost probably rather high to just handle that. So with rocks in the street or anything like that, that's not a problem to have our public work contractor come out and clean that all up. That's
of course, sweep it. I understand that. You need to take a look at it and see what it looks like.
I have actually looked at it. Yes.
It looks like something from like a third world country. Our neighborhood, it looks a mess. I'm not exaggerating. It really.
No, I was there probably a few weeks ago, and I think John walks by there kind of often also.
Yeah, John, what do you think of what it looks like?
I mean, frankly, I thought the big rocks looked fine. I thought that was the best option, but I see what you're saying. There are some parts of the road where the rolled curbing doesn't exist. So it looks like some parts of the road are compromised in some places where, it doesn't look even. Maybe some
Right.
waters washed it away. So I know what you're talking about there.
And the road, the way they cut it, it's all jagged. I mean, it's very dangerous.
Can we bring back the old rocks? Did they save the old big rocks? I think they built it better and it looked better. That was just my opinion. Because I do walk my dog, over there. I live right on North Main. But I see what you're saying in some parts. It's something that we can look into, and certainly, but maybe Liz, we could check to make sure if she's saying they said they were going to come back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
just
making
make
me
sure.
a little bit worried. But again, I know that maybe whoever you spoke to was aware that they were coming back out to redo some areas, just not all the areas. And then
Oh,
another part of the issue was that what spurred the project in the first place was that the road had been paved, 5-6 years ago? And in certain areas that had very steep slopes, and people were cutting corners and they were starting to rut them out. And so when it did rain, all of the stormwater was going there and it was eroding it out even more, to the point where the edges of the road were starting to crumble and it was destabilizing the road. So we didn't have them do any road repair, from my understanding. It was mostly to just address those areas where it was starting to destabilize the road and fill it in with the large rocks, hoping to increase storage of the stormwater so that people further down were experiencing less flooding issues. So ideally, a full-blown stormwater project needs to happen, but there was not budget to do something like that. But, trenching out those ruts that were already existing and putting in the stone, which would allow some storage and keep it there in those pockets instead of it continuing to flow downhill, was the initial intent.
Unfortunately, Liz, we got to get to the council meeting. We are officially late. Maybe we can continue this in that one. How's that?
thank you.
All right.
Jill, go to the regular meeting and discuss it. It might be a public safety issue.